China's top trade negotiator will be in Washington this week. Now, we're told this is not a formal negotiating session, and the Chinese official will likely only meet with deputy-level officials. China expert Gordon Chang joins me. Again, Gordon, we're told that this Chinese official did not come at the request of the U.S. Why would he come uninvited?
Well, I think, China certainly has a lot of reasons to want to come to a trade deal with the United States. The problem here, Stuart, is that there's political turmoil in the Communist Party right now. And I'm not so sure that anybody is willing to authorize concessions that would be necessary for a final trade deal with the United States. So we've got this 90-day trade pause, which ends on November 9th. We'll see if that's extended, and it very well may be, because China might not be in that position to make the deal that everybody wants.
You've been on this program before telling us about turmoil within China and the Communist Party. Gordon, it's not been widely reported, has it?
No, it hasn't, because, the Chinese system is extremely opaque. And of course, major news organizations don't want to report on things like this. And that's certainly understandable. Right now, though, there are signs of instability. The rumors are swirling around Beijing. Some of them are quite stunning. And so therefore, I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about them. But the point is that this is not consistent with stability. And so therefore, probably something going to happen. And one of the things that's important is that the Chinese military seems to have become even more powerful in the Communist Party system. So that has implications that we have yet to figure out. And until there's really some sign, like Xi Jinping not showing up for some important ceremony, then, the news media will not cover it.
Fascinating. Gordon, I want you to listen to what Trump had to say about China and denuclearization.
One of the things we're trying to do with Russia and with China is denuclearization. And it's very important. One of the things I discussed with President Putin the other day, it wasn't just that, it was also other things. And I think the denuclearization is it's a big aim, but Russia's willing to do it, and I think China's going to be willing to do it too.
Gordon, denuclearization. It sounds like getting rid of nuclear weapons. That would be a real stretch, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think really what President Trump is talking about is an arms control agreement. Our arms control agreement, New START, with Russia expires in February of next year. And after that, there are no agreements with Russia. Now, Russia, I think the president's right. Russia probably would be willing to agree to some sort of arms control deal because the country's fragile and it's not going to be adding to its arsenal anyway. So it might as well enter into a deal with us where we reduce our arsenals. China, though, is a very different matter for a lot of reasons. You have a military which is resurgent. You also have the question of verification. Is China going to allow American inspectors to roam the country at will? And that's what's absolutely necessary if you're going to have an agreement of that sort with China. So China has been very reluctant to even talk about this for decades. I think that this is a project which is just too big to accomplish in Trump's second term.
Got it. Gordon Chang, thanks for being with us. See you again real soon.